Okay, so
Yes.
we are here with Hiromi T. Rogers to do an interview about a
Mhm.
very interesting book that she has written, which is
Thank
called
you.
Anjin, The Life and Times of Samurai William Adams,
Mhm.
1564 to 1620. And her subtitle of the book is As Seen Through Japanese Eyes. This is actually the book here.
Yes. Yes.
And this year is the 400th anniversary
Yes.
of William Adams' death. Um, yeah, welcome, Hiromi. It's very nice to finally meet you face to face.
Yes. Thank you very much for
Thank,
inviting me. It's
thank
very,
you.
very nice to meet you. And
Yes, likewise.
yes.
So let's start with something very basic.
Yes.
Who was William Adams?
William Adams is a very ordinary Englishman.
Okay.
Ordinary young Englishman, son of a humble sailor who later in life traveled to the other side of the world and became a samurai lord.
Mm.
Then father died when he was 12, had to learn a trade, became a very successful ship pilot. At the age of 34, joined a disastrous Dutch East India expedition across the Atlantic and Pacific, during which many died. His brother was eaten by savages, and his ship was the only one to reach Japan. In Japan, he was thrown into a prison and condemned to death, but he impressed Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was to become shogun, and was spared. Over the next 5 years, he and the shogun developed a remarkable relationship.
Mm.
Then Anjin, on those time Adams became the shogun's personal advisor, tutor, and interpreter. His canon helped Ieyasu win the decisive Sekigahara War battle. He built European-style ship and secured trade deals for the Dutch and the English. In Japan, Adams' achievements are remembered to this day. Buddhist memorial services are held for him every year, and this year is 400 years anniversary of his death. He was the inspiration for the James Clover's best-selling novel Shogun and the subsequent film series. But the real story is just as extraordinary. In bringing together for the first time the Western and the Japanese narratives, my book brings us to as close as possible to the full amazing story.
Mm. Yeah, and I agree with you. Actually, I think the true story is far more interesting than
Yes,
the James Clavell.
yes. First time I was amazed at James Clover's story, but when I started researching, then found out more real story. First of all, I didn't believe it, but there was primary sources are there. So I really gradually more and more I realized the real story was more dramatic and more interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, I always think of William Adams as, I call him the patron saint of foreigners living in Japan. Because like myself, I saw the miniseries Shogun as a child. I watched it with my parents. And I think a lot of people my age, at least, and younger, sometimes even they decided to move to Japan, and they start to binge Japanese movies, and they watch a lot of Kurosawa and whatnot. And without a doubt, Shogun pops up. And I think some people think, oh, I wonder if it's going to be like that for me.
But behind that Shogun, eventually Adams became Lord, the fantastic life. But before he reached that position, so he has experienced always life or death.
Yes.
He really roller coaster life.
Yeah, and I think life in those days, even in Europe, was more difficult than our life today. But Japan was in the middle of the Sengoku period, the Warring States period. It's a very dangerous time.
Yes, that's why I'm going to say later. It's because no mercy and no human right existed. So everybody was actually living with fear.
Sure. Well, and just a second ago, you mentioned that he became a lord. And I think sometimes in English, some terms are a little different to us than would be in Japan. The government systems are very different. And so, my readers probably come across the term Hatamoto a lot. Because my website, Japan This, always focuses on the history of Edo, Tokyo. But what a Hatamoto was at the very beginning of the Edo period is very different from what Hatamoto became at the late Edo period. So can you explain to us about William Adams, now Miura Anjin? Can you explain his samurai status?
Maybe it's a Hatamoto. Yes, specific Hatamoto. Hatamoto is late, the early Edo period, and later Hatamoto status was very different. So I will explain about Anjin's Hatamoto status.
Thank you.
Yes. Adams was honored with the prestigious position Hatamoto or Banama in 1605. That made him a direct retainer of the Shogun court, and he was given the lordship of Miura Peninsula, his shogun's granted domain. This is why his Japanese name became Miura, and Anjin means pilot. It was the first time for the Western person to be given the samurai title. In general term, Hatamoto means army commander. There were 3 different ranks: high, middle, and low, and they were all elite samurai in the early Edo period in the 17th centuries. Adams was extraordinarily high-ranking Hatamoto in the great warrior class. High-ranking Hatamoto owned between 200 and 600 koku estate. Adams owned 250 koku or 61-acre estate that made an annual income of 88 ryo, That is around 70,000 pounds or $94,000 today's money from its rice harvest. And he was given daily 2 pounds of rice by shogun. Rice was exchanged for money. Those time, the average annual wage for Japanese laborers was about 400 pounds or $600 annual wages. However, he would have been required to pay 40% of tax, and he had over 90,000. So it would have been hard to manage the estate. Although Adam's status was great warrior, he was not requested to engage in battle fighting for Ieyasu, nor in the martial art. His role was as advisor, tutor, and interpreter who provided shogun with news, information, and knowledge from a world of which he had been completely ignorant. So his estate wasn't as large as high-ranking daimyo or lord, but he had more influential power to shogun than even middle-ranking daimyo. So that's his status.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that really stood out to me in your book is what easy access he had to the shogun's court.
Yes.
And again, this is something that it doesn't really come up in Japan, but it does come up in a lot of my own studies, is as you get deeper into the Edo period, the court becomes far more ritualized. And by the end of the Edo period, you don't even see the shogun. He's behind a curtain, which sounds more like Kyoto with the emperor than Ieyasu's style, which is more straight off the battlefield. Let's get business done. So he arrived at a very it was a good opportunity at that time that I think couldn't happen later. Well, in doing your research, did you get a feeling for who the real William Adams was, like as a person?
As a person, I found him the person who always looked at the world as big as the sea.
Okay.
And because despite his humble background, he achieved extraordinary things.
Yes.
Using his intelligence and developing his wisdom and skills. And he had an open-minded and well-balanced mind, developed scientific knowledge, and studied 4 or 5 foreign languages by himself. And also adaptable. He was adaptable, patient, brave, responsible, reliable, and aloof with dignity, but also kind to less privileged people.
There was an incident that you mentioned in the book with what was his name? Tsukeji.
Tsukeji.
Yeah.
Tsukeji. Little boy.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Tsukeji was impressed that he would walk with him, and I thought, if you don't understand the culture of that time,
Mm.
that little line, maybe you don't notice it. Like, well, of course he's walking with this guy. They're having a conversation. But I think at that time in public, he would walk in front of Sukeji and
Yes.
maybe not even talk to him until they're inside the house or something. So it struck me as very English.
Yes. No, not to me, not to everybody. But this is why from the beginning. So first time, Sukeji, when Sukeji met Adams, was already Ieyasu advisor, sort of. So Sukeji showed huge respect to Anjin. Then Anjin asked Sukeji where he asked him, where is your mansion? Because Anjin thought Sukeji was living in the mansion, in the mansion. So Sukeji was surprised by that word. Then when Adams went to Sukeji's hut, it's very small, but Adams was still, they got more close. They became close friends, and they got to know each other. Informal.
I really liked that story.
Yes, that's why I said he looks aloof. His colleague said Adams was quite sometimes looks cold and aloof, and not to show so much emotion. But on the other hand, he's very kind to less privileged people.
Yeah, and I wonder, because you said some people thought he was aloof, and these were the other Englishmen who were saying this, and I wonder, I've been in Japan 16, almost 17 years, and the longer you're here, the more Japanese you become. At least for me, I want to appreciate the culture, and I'm not gonna live like an American in Japan. I'm gonna live like a Japanese in Japan. And I think with William Adams, the situation must be much more intense at that time.
Yes.
And he's sort of acting the part. He's a Hatamoto.
Yes.
And in Japan, I think you also have to have your tatemae, your outward appearance. And I think maybe he became Japanese in some way.
Yes, very much. Yes, very much. So you were going to ask next question, but I was going to say Japanese. Now his name as Miura Anjin is in history book. So Japanese still believe or treat him as a part of the family, the Japanese. So not the gaijin.
Right.
Not the gaijin.
Or yabanjin.
No, they don't think.
Well, so the next thing I want to talk about is that Ieyasu forbade Anjin from returning home, but he had a lot of opportunities to just get on a boat and go, but he didn't. And
why?
Yeah,
why?
Well, not even why. But how do you think Ieyasu would have reacted?
It's because Adams' fellow members also suggested Adams to get a boat and escape from one of many coastlines. Coastlines. So they thought it's possible. But Adams, because as Adams got to know more Ieyasu and also had seen the defense and attack capabilities of the Japanese feudal government, Bakufu. So Adams realized it impossible to escape from the guard placed all over Japan by Bakufu. There were also many ninja disguised as fishermen And also most of real fishermen would immediately report to their authority. So before Adam's boat, if they called boat, reached China or one island of Asia, he and his men would be caught by Japanese, and then Ieyasu would execute them all. So as Adam saw, he would never try to escape, but try to get permission from him, from Ieyasu. But Adams is not only the one who lived with fear. Many, almost all years, even close retainers like Kuroda Nagamasa or Honda Masazumi and all other Japanese lords and their families were living with fear of plot or betrayal in the feudal government, where no mercy and human rights existed. So Adams got sense. It's no chance, no escape. So,
yeah, I think even if he had escaped and hadn't been brought back, that maybe his Japanese wife and servants or his other fellow sailors might have to pay his penalty. So yeah, don't break the law in Edo.
No, and also even okay, so it's before 1613. Ieyasu sort of reluctantly accepted. Okay, so he understood so much. Anjin wanted to return, so now you can. But he didn't have to escape. He could have gone back to England, but he realized that in England life is very different.
Yeah. So actually, that actually goes into my next question. When Ieyasu did give him permission, in your book, you mentioned something from his diary where he says, "I had become too poor," and I was curious, what do you think he meant by that?
It's because he knew the Captain John Sayles, who came to Japan on the Clove in 1613. He had already reported negatively about him to the English East India Company in London. Then before the captain the captain left Japan, he was verbally abusive and had given Adams rude treatment. So it's likely Sayles told Adams when he returned home, he would start from the bottom again. So Adams assumed he would be too poor. And also he assumed the wife, English wife, would have been remarried. But then marry him. So he's an English wife, English and Dutch. So that the wife would have been remarried. Adams was concerned. And he was concerned that nobody would believe in England that he was a lord in Japan.
Yeah.
So there was, yes, so because there was no telephone, internet, iPhone, those time. So he was very worried.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if he wanted to get a message to England, it would take months to get there. And even at that, you mentioned that they weren't sending his messages. He tried to contact.
He tried, but anyway, he very bad luck to the first Englishman came was John Sayles. He more exaggerated. It's very negatively about him, but and other captains and English people were Philippine, no, Patani, but and they knew Adams and the other or Dutch and some other English were in Japan. They knew that, but they didn't. They hadn't tried to contact Adams.
Yeah. Yeah, he had like really good luck and he had really bad luck.
Good and bad. Yes, but his character, he's very determined. He had never given up his abilities, and when he faced very difficulties, he still hadn't given up. Very determined. He did his best and tried to adapt foreign culture or that difficult situation. And he believed then he had been helped by eventually Lady Luck, he said.
Lady Luck. Okay.
So my message, I saw the message is don't give up easily.
No, it's a good message, and again, like I call him the patron saint of foreigners in Japan. Is like sometimes the culture is different. The things can sometimes get some people down. Just being aware. I mean, you live in the UK, so it's another culture, and I think that sometimes it can be difficult, and you always have to adapt, and you have to accept your situation and move on with it. But the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I mentioned his Japanese wife. Yeah, so can you tell us a little about her and the children?
Children, yes.
Yeah, and then he also had some other women, and also had children by them. And can you tell us also what happened to those kids as well?
Okay. It's there is no marriage certificate for Adams and Yuki has been found, but it was true that their common law marriage and the wedding would have been arranged by Ieyasu. Ieyasu close retainers ordered by Ieyasu. Under the feudal government, anybody in the samurai class was not allowed to have a free marriage. There was no love story of the kind of described in the film Shogun and other books.
Mariko?
No, didn't exist. And also, there is no official record of Magome, Yuki's father, having a daughter. So I believe that as he had craved for being involved in trade, he adopted his maid Yuki, who would occasionally have been offered for sex with guests in his guest house. And married her to Adams for a profitable business.
Okay.
Adams' children by Yuki were Joseph and Susanna, but they both seemed to die before they married. But it is believed Joseph erected a memorial monument to honor his parents at Hemi, the estate within Miura Peninsula. Adams' family was permitted to own the domain for a further 200 years. But after Joseph died, no one had inherited the lordship of Miura. And Adams had several concubines and produced children. But all these children were illegitimate. But one of them was given money for school for studying foreign languages. But after Sakoku, Japan's national isolation policy was issued, they were all sent to Indonesia. It is said later that their mothers were also sent there. That was Hidetara and Iemitsu's time.
Right. Yeah. So after the children went to Indonesia, they disappear from history, I guess. Okay. So earlier I mentioned Tsukeji.
Yes, Tsukeji.
And I think we're very lucky to have a source like Tsukeji because he's not samurai. He's
very ordinary.
Yeah, very ordinary guy. And another source that you quote quite often in the book is Miura Joshi. Can you tell us a little bit about these guys?
Yes. Okay. The Tsukeji was a fisherman's boy who had helped the grandfather after he had lost his parents. When he was 13 years old, he met Adams at Raga, in Miura Peninsula. After his grandfather died, Adams adopted the orphan as his young retainer and taught him foreign languages such as English, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese.
Oh.
And after Adams died, Tsukeji became a foreign language teacher and wrote a memoir about Adams. Then Miura Joshin was a merchant and writer who lived in Nihonbashi and brought rice to Adams' residence. He was also a descendant of part of Hojo clan who owned the Miura Peninsula until Lord Hojo Ujimasa died. And the domain was confiscated in 1590. However, after they lost the domain, some member of the clan, the Hojo clan, used or were allowed to use the name of Miura. So, and his account was written in the 17th century and is preserved at the Imperial Household Agency.
So how did these sources and other Japanese sources that you used for the book help to understand or help shape your understanding of William Adams and what his Japanese friends and associates thought of him?
Yes, I found most Japanese sources to be supportive to Adams. And his Japanese friends and associates had treated him part of their Japanese family. And when they saw Adams rescuing some of his former enemy, Portuguese and Spanish Catholics, the Japanese, learned from Adams that racial and religious or other specific group discrimination would be wrong, certainly wouldn't be productive to their society.
Yeah.
So they learned from Adams. So the Japanese, most of Japanese friends and associates had or showed huge respect to Adams, and they still want to learn Adams' philosophy, So.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Well, and he went out of his way to help, or not help, but to save, some of the like the Jesuits
mm,
who, from the beginning, wanted
mm,
Ieyasu to crucify him and
mm,
his
mm,
fellow
mm.
sailors. I mean,
Yes.
I
Most
wouldn't help those people.
No, most people is before crucified, he was put in prison, so that he was thrown into awful, dreadful prison. And at that time, Adams even was thinking of suicide because so awful, really awful. And who has done it? That is a Jesuit.
Yeah.
So then later he had power. I want to ask many people and you, if you had same experiences, now you are given title, the prestigious position. You are much more powerful than Jesuit. It's very difficult for you to be kind and
Yeah.
rescue that former enemy. They
Yeah.
tried to kill you,
Yes.
but the Tsukeji and other Japanese people saw Adams rescuing all nationality, Spanish. So he had hidden Spanish, Portuguese, or certainly Dutch people also came. So many nationalities actually came to his house. So, but also Japanese historian said, yeah, he's kind. He's kind. It's not because he was Christian. It's naturally that he believes human life is important, but also he was similar to Ieyasu, killing also because somebody hurt me, so they deserve to take revenge. But it's not really wise, not clever, not wise for the society. As I said earlier, Anjin and yes, always look at the world. It's very, very big, very big. Yeah. Then killing people, having war, the fighting, it's not productive. So when they find somebody, okay, come from former enemy group, but individuals are different, and then try to respect their skills or talent, then can create or more develop their society, they thought. And this message is also very important to modern life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think just getting revenge because it feels good, like you said, it's not productive, and
but I can understand that the feelings, the
absolutely.
emotion. Yes, I can understand the emotions, the feelings. But in the end, when you see calm down and think of big picture, see revenge and fighting, discrimination, not productive.
Not productive. And maybe it says something about his character. You said his philosophy, that maybe you don't want to be responsible for something that serious. Taking a person's life. You can be petty towards people. You can not be friendly to them if you don't like them, not help them. But killing someone is quite serious. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Okay, so Hiromi, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk about this book, and to answer my questions. And I just want to point out once again to everybody that, the book is Anjin, The Life and Times of Samurai William Adams. I think you can get this at Amazon.
Yes.
Amazon.com.
Yes.
I highly recommend reading this book. I think anybody who reads my website will absolutely love it. Is there
Thank you very much.
anything else that you would like to add? Do you have any future projects or?
Yes, very short.
Okay,
Very
okay.
short. Yeah, very short. I'm translating the story into Japanese. Now, the book will be published by the Japanese publisher, Fuzambo International, next year.
Wow.
So next year. So I hope the book will be used at the Japanese study course in the Western universities or education area organization, as well as in the English version. Because the English version, this one, are already used quite largely Western universities. So.
Great.
So there are many now, in particularly America, there are many Japanese study courses.
Yes.
So they might, I hope, they will use that the Japanese version too.
I hope so as well. I mean, I definitely enjoyed reading it, and that is one thing about history books is
Yes.
some books can be very dry sometimes.
Yes.
But William's story is a very human story, and so it's good that you can tell it in a narrative form. It makes it much easier to read and easier to relate to him as a person.
Yes, because first of all, William Adams, the aloof, so he hardly talk about himself. So look at only his diary, logbook, not really helpful to understand behind your private life. So very matter of fact person he is. Yes, and also generally history book don't talk about people like Sukeji. So ordinary people's life are not mentioned. But I wanted my book aimed to show the whole picture of Anjin's life as a human.
Yeah.
Now everybody knows he's a great man. So he's a great man. So, but each time, so Anjin's memorial services, and the people say, "Oh, he's a great man." We already know he's a great man, but the great man. But he comes from very ordinary, humble. He has humble background. So he was born as ordinary man. But he has done extraordinary things. So I wanted to know that all details as much as possible, including his relation with ordinary people.
Well, that was my my favorite part of the book as well. So so thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.